Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour and Jetline video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, guys, we know that Boeing is going through one of its biggest crises during the last 2 decades. So, will its major competitor, Airbus, come in and just stick the knife into them? And if they don't, why wouldn't they? Stay tuned.
Wind 31016, everyone right, set on it. Start to land 31 right. Delta 260.
This video is brought to you in cooperation with our long-term sponsor Skillshare. The Skillshare is an online learning community with tens of thousands of high-quality courses in pretty much anything that you can imagine. Now, the 500 first of you who uses this link here below will get 2 months of premium Skillshare absolutely for free, so you can go in and check out the courses that you will like. Right, guys, so what we're seeing right now is a huge crisis for Boeing, all right? Boeing is being, questioned when it comes to the quality of their aircraft, when it comes to the safety of their organization, and even the governing authority, FAA, is being questioned at the moment. So will Airbus, its European rival, come in and take the chance to really stab them in the back and take over some of their business? Or will they not do anything? Well, what we're seeing at the moment is actually proof of the latter. It seems like Airbus is not going in and not doing anything of this. So what could possibly be the reason for that? Well, it turns out that there are actually 3 different reasons. So reason number 1 is that it's really bad for business, right? The aviation business builds on trust. It's built on you, the passengers, having a full trust, not only in the aircraft types that you're flying, but also in its pilots and in the airlines, and also in the aviation authorities, the governing authorities, the ones that are issuing the licenses to fly to all of these. So whenever there is any of these coming into question, whenever you have safety being questioned, it is not good for business. So there's no way that Airbus would come in and kind of point to safety breaches or point to reason to be afraid of flying in a Boeing aircraft, because that would inevitably turn around towards them. This is why you see that when airline and aircraft manufacturers are talking, they're always talking up their own products. They're never talking down other people's products. So it's always about how much more effective their aircraft is, how much longer their range is, how much more comfortable it is to sit in their seats, but they never say anything about the competitors. And that is for that particular reason. We have to maintain the trust. The public trust is the most important asset that any business inside of the aviation world has, and it cannot be questioned. All right? So that's reason number 1. Now, reason number 2 has to do with training and the fact that when an airline, for example, chooses a specific aircraft type, it doesn't only buy an aircraft. It buys everything that comes with it, including spare parts and including, most importantly, the training of its pilots. When, for example, an airline decides to buy the Boeing 737, it probably does so because it has already been using 737s before. And that is because of a peculiarity called the type rating. So, for example, me, I have my type rating on the Boeing 737-800, what's called the new generation. This enables me to fly everything from the 737-300 all the way up to the 737 MAX. Now, if I want to move in between variations of this same type, I only need to do something called the difference training, which means that I need to sit down and I need to go through theoretical material either on paper form or, as I'm sure you've all heard, on an iPad to point out what the differences are. But the individuals or the variations inside of the type rating are supposed to have so small differences that you don't really need any simulator training or anything like that. You just need to be aware of where the differences are and how they will affect you. And you can effectively just move in between the variations. The same goes for the Airbus family. So if an aircraft or an airline has gone in and bought Airbus, they will be able to fly their pilots on all of the different Airbus types with some minor modifications, right? So this means that an airline that's gone in and bought, for example, the 737 MAX, is very unlikely to move over to an Airbus unless there is significant financial gain to be made. Because it will mean that all of the pilots that have been flying the 737 now needs to go in to a very lengthy type rating course that can take up to 2 months in the simulator, plus line training. And during that time, they might not be able to produce as much. Well, when they're sim, they're definitely not going to be able to produce anything. So the airline would be losing revenue. So movement between different types is very rare because it's very costly. Okay? Now, reason number 3, and this is probably the most kind of interesting reason, is the way that the aircraft manufacturing world is looking right now. So if you go back in the history, in the beginning there was only Boeing, basically. And then you had McDonnell Douglas coming up, eventually being bought up by Boeing. And then during the 1980s or so, you could see that Airbus was starting to rise with a few other players as well. But from like the beginning of 2000s and onwards, there's really only been Boeing and Airbus, okay? Now, when you have a duopoly like that, meaning that there's only 2 players inside of the business, it means that those 2 have to adapt to each other. All right, they're effectively competing about the same market share, be it on short haul, short to medium haul, which we're talking about when we're talking about the Airbus 320 and the Boeing 737, or long haul. Okay, and inside of these different segments, it is important that the players don't outshine each other too much. And why is this? Well, that has to do with the cost of actually developing new aircraft. So once you have created a new aircraft type, be it the 737 or the Airbus 320, you want to be able to milk that type out as much money as possible. You want to make sure that you can convince airlines to buy your type. But if you become too good, let's say that the Airbus 320 would be far superior to the 737. Well, in that case, Boeing would not live with that. Boeing would have to go down to the drawing boards and tell their engineers we need to build a completely new aircraft. Now, the cost of doing that would be, well, depending on what type of aircraft it is, but in the type of 737, probably $10-20 billion to do. Okay? But, and here comes the kicker, the cost of just upgrading the existing type is a tenth of that. So we're talking maybe $1.5 billion in order to, increase and squeeze up the effectiveness of the existing type. So what was happening back in the late 2008, 2009 was that Airbus came with its Airbus 320 Neo, which stands for New Engine Option. That made the Airbus quite a lot more effective than the 737, 15-20% more fuel effective. And when they came up with that, obviously they got a lot of attention, they received a lot of orders, but the Airbus executives were likely quite worried as well. Because Airbus had, up until, around there, about a 59% market share, right? They knew that if they passed the 60% market share, so that Boeing would be pressed down to less than 40, it was likely that Boeing was going to respond with trying to make a new type. And if Boeing made a new type, that would mean that that type was likely going to be so effective that it would push the 320 out and force Airbus into reacting and building another type of their own. So instead of this increase, $1.5 billion in development cost, they would now have to endeavor on something like 10, 15, $20 billion to create a new aircraft type. And this they were aware of. So what they did, now you'll find links to the research material I've used for this here in the description. But what they did was they actually aggressively went into the American market, and they went after American Airlines, for example. Because American Airlines had always been Boeing, okay? But they managed to secure an order with American Airlines, and that had exactly the effect that they were hoping for. Boeing, which was actually probably at that point looking into building a new type because they realized that the 737 is 1960 material, the Airbus is 1980 material, maybe we should just stop with the NG and create something new. Well, when they saw that Airbus was actually pushing into and taking on American Airlines, they realized that no, we need to have something now. We need to have something quicker that we can respond to. And they created the 737 MAX. All right? MAX is effectively just like the Neo, and a slight improvement on aerodynamics, but a big improvement on engines. When they did that, I am guessing that the Airbus executives just sighed like, oh, a big sigh of relief. Because now they could continue this price war, right? They could continue to pitch against the new 737 MAX. They would maybe lose a little bit of market share, but they would still be able to sell their Airbus 320, and they wouldn't have to go in to, a hugely expensive development of a new aircraft type. So this is probably where the MAX came from in the first place. A sense of need to continue to fight the Airbus 320, but using the old airframe. Another reason why both Airbus and Boeing are unlikely to want to start building a new short, medium, single aisle jet is because so far, whenever they've done an increase, like a performance increase in an aircraft, there has been new technology available. So, for example, when they started using composites in their aircraft in order to reduce the weight and make it more sturdy, that hadn't been used before, but the technology to actually make the aircraft were there, so they started doing it. The next was the huge increase in engine capacity and effectiveness of the engines, which led to both the Airbus 320neo and the Boeing 737 MAX. The next area the next step to take in order to make aircraft more efficient is likely going to be in the cockpit automation and use of artificial intelligence. But the problem here is that technology is still not ready. So it's likely that both of these members of the duopoly are waiting for that technology to be more ready in order to take avail of that when they take the next step, the next generation of new aircraft to come. So it works in both favor to not take over too much of each other's markets, because it might lead into a price war which both of them is going to lose at. Make sense? Good. Now, if you want to come in and discuss this, these are the kind of discussions that we do inside of the Mentour Aviation app all the time. So there are free download links here. You can go down, download it, and join up in the discussion and tell me if there's something that you're wondering about, or if you're a passenger out there and you're a little bit afraid of flying and you want to ask something, do so. Loads of pilots in there. I want to take this opportunity as well to thank the long-term sponsor of this channel, which is Skillshare. Now, Skillshare is an online learning community, like I said before, with tens of thousands of courses in pretty much anything that you can imagine. Now, a course that I think that you guys will thoroughly enjoy is about how to become a better public speaker. Most of you guys are probably feeling that, sweat in their hands and, feeling of dread when you have to get up in front of your class or in front of your colleagues and make a presentation. You don't have to feel like that, and there are several great courses on Skillshare on how to prepare and deliver a perfect public speech. Another course that I think that you guys will really enjoy is how to prepare for your PPL training using your home simulator. Learn how to read checklists and how to speak to air traffic control and read aviation maps, all inside of this course, which is available on Skillshare in Premium. The 501st of you who uses this link here below will get 2 months of free access to Premium Skillshare, which means that it's completely free of risk to check out these courses and see what you think about it. Have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and make sure that you go in and check out the quiz now. After this, I will make a quiz on this video, and there are several quizzes about previous videos as well available on mentorpilot.com. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.